from other brutes. Instead, he has the Chaos Strike, is it? Sorry, that's not there either. He has got the Royal Librarian, one of in here, and I guess just maximum card. Oh, sorry, he's got Immolation Aura at times too. I didn't notice that. That's a new inclusion in Brute Demon Hunter. Lambie series absolutely blindsided me when I played him on ladder. He had the one Immolation Aura, but the two here could be a very big deal versus Shadow Priest.
Yeah, it gives you, I think, a much higher, well, it gives you some chance realistically, because outside of that is a truly terrible matchup for the Brute Demon Hunter. But trahison is getting himself psyched up. He's got his legend card pack pillow, and just as he always does whenever he's getting to the game, take a deep breath and make sure that you are playing on point, because already he's got himself what is actually a very premium hand for this matchup.
Yeah, it's great. The Tusk Piercer, not only does it help progress your quest, oftentimes you just swing with it to make sure you get your Peddler drawing through and cycling, but the equipped weapon is pretty useful against Demon Hunter because they are playing these little 1/1s and the Tour Guide as well. Tusk Piercer to start off the turn for trahison, I absolutely support over the quest because you're not likely to progress quest on turn 2 anyway, so might as well get something off the board.
I was wondering if you ever go Coin Tusk Piercer, which would allow you to go, next turn, trade your Sigil, play your Sigil Runner, trade the Peddler as well, plus the card draw. It does give you quest completion, right?
Yes, I think, just barely. Which is, you know, always worth something. Turboing quest versus priest is a very big deal.
But, I mean, here for trahison, the Neophyte coming down is fine. I don't think he was planning on breaking the weapon this turn anyway, so not being able to fit in the hero power is perfectly fine. And even though, you know, as I was laying out, there is the potential for quest completion, I like that he's condensing his card draw. When you have Brute in hand, you don't want to exactly complete quest each turn. You want to over-complete it. You want to use all your card draw in one fell swoop so that Brute can come down on the same turn.
Yeah, that's very true in this matchup. You're not focused on getting to Kerchus as soon as possible. You are just getting Brutes online to make sure you can stem the bleeding, which is really severe at the moment because Surrender already had a decent turn with just Wriggling Horror, but picking up the Void Touched Attendant to fill out the mana and push an extra 2 damage and possibly 4 extra damage from here on out is just enormous.
So we could obviously start trying to dig for that Immolation Aura that we were talking about as the tech to be able to clear off this Void-Touched Attendant. Ooh.
It looks like he's focused a bit more on trying to get a Brute down, which 2 draws from Spectral, 1 draw from Sigil, and the weapon going face. If he got a cheap enough discount, he could have gotten a Brute down this turn, but these discounts aren't good enough for that.
Yeah, not quite. It gives him a lot of card draw next turn, to be fair. Like, he's guaranteed at least 4, 5, 6, 7. So I think Brute is actually guaranteed playable just with double acrobatics, coin Sigil Runner, swing the weapon is exactly 7 cards drawn on the turn.
Which is all well and good, but is he alive next turn? Like, he might be alive, but then dead to ping on the backswing. Obviously, there's no way for him to by this point, but is he just dead? 8, 9 damage, and then you play an Auntie, so it's like +4, +4. Yeah, I think he's dead. Maybe 1 off?
Just dead.
Never count. Yeah, you
just dead. Oh, man. What an ending. I think, honestly, he had a chance to pull it back there. Like, maybe he was dead to pings a little bit too quickly, but that would have been, at the very least, a single Brute turn. If he picks up a Philosophy, which could be reduced to 0 mana from the quest, could have been a double, even triple Brute turn, but wasn't to be. Void Touched Attendant, the Auntie, just too powerful here for Surrender, and the cleanest 1-0 sweep, 1-0 victory of his life.
That was all very simple for Surrender there. Sorry, I counted the Wriggling Horror damage instead of the ping. Yeah, the ping was even 1 over lethal, just Surrender immediately spotting it. Super clean. easy game, and we already know that this is a good matchup for the Priest. I didn't quite expect it to be so fast. It's not as though trahison had a terrible hand, right? He had the Tusk Piercer. It's just that versus that start from Surrender, you can see just how abusable the opening turns from Brute Demon Hunter are when they are running so few pieces of removal. Even the Immolation Aura wouldn't have been that good against that board with all the health buffs from the Wriggling Horror.
And now trahison on the other side. Brutes didn't get the job done, crossed off the list, given that this is once again last hero standing. So we need to try and find a counter available. And with his handlock banned out of the way, the best anti-aggro deck he thinks he has available is another aggro deck, just taking the straight up mirror as his best chance of turning this one around, which is always a terrible sign in last hero standing.
And it's not that the Brute was favored in the first place. So really, what Surrender has done here is post-ban, he's eliminated any deck that fits the control/anti-aggro archetype, right? The Garrote Rogue can maybe get there, but trahison thinks that he would rather take a mirror than the Garrote Rogue in this matchup, which is understandable. I still think it is slightly leaning Shadow Priest favored. And so Surrender could possibly just take a sweep in the series if he wins the mirror, but if not, suddenly everything turns on its head, right? Surrender has lost his best aggressive deck, and then the Garrote Rogue can run rampant. Kind of nuance of LHS when you run these balanced lineups, and a +1 archetype is very volatile.
Ooh, interesting hand here. Surrender keeping the Wriggling Horror is obviously a little bit bold, because on turn 2 it's far from guaranteed to be able to proc. You're kind of hoping for a 0-cost minion to go alongside it. Which he hasn't got, of course. But then trahison on the other side, just keeping the Tour Guide and the Freshman, himself not holding onto a 0-cost minion that he had access to, is also interesting, because we have seen some players go for those 0 costs, kind of to be able to offset being on the coin, so they can just get more immediate tempo down.
Oh, true. I think I will have to look a bit deeper into these Shadow Priest mulligans. Maybe content for next week. But for Surrender, obviously this is an insane top deck. The Wriggling Horror did not line up very well against a board of 2 minions with 1 attack. I think had he not drawn the Kultiran Chaplain, he might have still ended up on playing that over a ping here. But with the Kultiran, it just makes everything so simple.
Is he going just Deceptor here without... Okay, he wants to just hero power trade. Okay, fair enough. I thought he was going to go face there, but I guess the 0 mana hero power does incentivize a trade here, so fair enough. Crisis averted. I'm just a dum-dum.
Oh, another, great pickup for Surrender, because it does allow him 2 targets for the Wriggling, although the trade is a little bit awkward, right? Because the Divine Shield is not really helping things if he wants to take the VT into the Frazzled Freshman instead. I wonder if this is ever a ping plus Aug Merchant on the 2-3 turn?
Yeah. I mean, I was looking at that quite heavily. Again, the problem is that this hand some way incentivizes you to just dump your cards as much as possible, and you don't have to necessarily get good trades to make this a good turn. Like just playing Aug Merchant, Wriggling Horror, giving Divine Shield to what would then be a 2-5 is still a good turn. But I'm unconvinced it's good enough.
Yeah, it's all a bit weird. Like the 1-5 into 1-2, then ping that, then play Wriggling is also an option. It's all a little bit weird. So what he's doing instead here is like, isn't this just worse than? Yeah, didn't he just lose 1 health on his minion?
And 1 damage face?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, yes, that's a misplay that looks small, but in the Shadow Priest mirror, every health on every tiny minion matters.
Yeah.
So that's an uncharacteristic play from Surrender there. I think the ping with hero power and then the Aug Merchant, like we said a while ago, is strictly better. And now that means trahison has still not a great turn, but it feels like the second Twilight Deceptor has to get value now because he really wants minions for his Gandling.
Yeah, absolutely. Elucia, as is usually the case in this matchup, like we've seen it been very good today, but usually it's in situations like this when both players have a couple cards in hand, and Elucia is little more than just a 1-3.
As for what trahison is hoping to get off the raised Deadpool, honestly, nothing super exciting. If he had any Tiny Fins played this early, that would be amazing, so he could immediately go for Gandling. But this is a matchup where you can just drop Gandling as a 3-6, and if you're ahead on board, it is very likely to stick around. Not easy for the opposing priest to clear that off. And that's a right that Surrender could possibly go for here. If he just VTs over the tour guide, drops his Gandling, it's always sticking next turn, I think.
Yeah, it would have to be like wriggling and hero power in order to be able to clear it off. And at the very least, then, you know, you're forcing your opponent off of playing their own Gandling, off of doing what they want to do on the turn, and taking awkward trades into a very well-statted minion.
Yeah, true. Always was a bit of an exaggeration. Bad.
Yes.
Although we always use it that way in Hearthstone. This always wins.
Always.
Yeah, so if you go Gandling and they do have the wriggling, I guess the biggest punish is wriggling, trade, hero power, and that's it, right? You can't really fit in an Aug Merchant. And that means 1.5 minions are going into the Gandling. One of them dies immediately. And that is still a win for Surrender, I feel like. So
yeah,
I'd be inclined to just drop it here.
I'm taking the risk. My opponent has shown... wow, no real... You know, they're given no inclination they're going to be able to clear off the Gandling necessarily. But it looks like trahison was very happy with whatever he got off the top. There it is, a 0-mana Tiny Fin. You can go Gandling, Tiny Fin, raise dead, and hope to resurrect the Tiny Fin as well because of the way the interaction works, where it actually destroys the minion. He hits it! Oh my god.
Yeah, I think Surrender can get out of this game now.
Yeah.
The Gandling last turn wasn't obvious to Surrender, but honestly, the alternative option he went for of the Voracious Reader, it's not a good play either. You draw one card,
Sure.
yes, but you're playing a 3-mana 1/3 in the Shadow Priest Mirror. Just fundamentally, that doesn't win games. It could be that Surrender thought he needed more juice for the Gandling, because even if it's stuck, he would end up like playing a 3-mana card into the Gandling, which is not the ideal way to buff it, but I'd rather take that one top deck and maybe the Wriggling Horror in order to win that. Just at the drop of the hat, the matchup ends just like that, though. Shadow Priest Mirror with Gandling in it has truly changed the way that this back and forth trade war goes.
And for Surrender, he can draw 3 cards for his opponent if he likes with the Voracious Reader. But I don't think that's going to be doing it. It's pretty much the worst card that he could top deck in his opponent's deck. Not that it really matters. I think there's just no way back into the game now, right? He just takes too much damage.
Yeah, agreed. There's no way to discover cards that aren't in your deck in this matchup, so no way he can suddenly play Habu Gabu's Control Shadow Priest instead, play some Hysterias. So he will get run over, and he knows it. Gonna throw it down there. That means Shadow Priest on either side has gotten a victory, but this is a big deal for trahison, because I honestly feel like even though Surrender has a good counter queue into this Priest with his Shaman, trahison's Garrote Rogue is looking really strong in all these remaining matchups.
Yeah, I agree. I think that trahison, you know, I mean, again, even against the Shadow Priest, we can argue back and forth. But as you said, the Shaman, the Warlock, pretty good matchups, all things considered. Even if the stats for Warlock versus Rogue, I think, indicate that it's a little bit closer of a matchup. Again, I might be coping a little bit here, but I think that as a lot of the early win rates with Rogue, a lot of the HS replay win rates with Rogue, you have to take with a big grain of salt, because there's a big learning curve. Players are going to be misplaying a lot because it is, in my opinion, such a difficult deck. And so I would still give the advantage with the Rogue to both in regards to the Shaman and the Warlock.
That is true. I maybe over-exaggerate just how favored rogues are in every matchup. It does come down to, you know, a couple % even if you are quite good at the deck. It's just considered strong overall because even when it has bad matchups, it doesn't feel completely out there. Unless it's versus exactly Control Warrior with Bulwark of Azeroth, but we know nobody who has made it to stream this weekend is bringing that. So I still feel like Garrote Rogue can have the numbers working in its favor here, but I got ahead of myself. Right now, there's no Garrote Rogue in the equation. It's the Quest Shaman counter Q into Priest, which we already saw go in the direction of the unfavorable earlier today.
We have. It's. I don't think it's something we're going to see again. I do think this is an overwhelmingly favored matchup for the Quest Shaman. Taking a look at the tech decisions once again. Primal Dungeoneer, I think, if anything, improves the matchup. Obviously, with Marshspawns in there, you are not guaranteed to draw Canal Slogger, even if you do hit the nature spell off of it. But it just gives that little bit of extra consistency. It's just another strong play that you can go for on turn 3, leading up into potentially drawing your strong removal cards, drawing the Marshspawn, and just putting yourself in yet another great position in the matchup.
Strangely enough, I feel like Canal Slogger is not that important of a card in the matchup compared to, say, Face Hunter. Like, a lot of the time, you win the matchup by being more proactive than the Priest, especially if you're on the play and you have access to Lightning Bloom, just as Surrender has here. A lot of the time, you can get so far ahead that you don't even need healing. You just need continuous removal, so that if the Priest somehow top decks Gandling at the last moment, you can kill that immediately. I guess the Canal Slogger is good for that purpose. It trades very nice into Gandling. But oh my gosh, this opener for Surrender, all he needs is like a Novice Zapper or a Guidance, and he's in business.
Absolutely. I mean, another Bloom would not go amiss as well to be able to play everything on turn 2. There's a lot of good top decks that he can find here.
Oh,
there you go.
Take that. Note Taker also good, but this just works out perfectly now. Gonna go for the Serpent Shrine over the Feral Spirit. I agree with. Just get rid of the Auntie as soon as and gets a Rush Minion! Hello!
Absolutely disgusting. Feral Spirits to follow up as well. The only hint that Surrender should be afraid is if he absolutely bricks on any value for the rest of the game. But even then, I think that's such a slim possibility given how the Shaman deck is put together.
Honestly, the Shaman curve ends even lower than a lot of the aggro decks.
True.
Only playing cards up to 4 cost, and that's because you want to keep the overloads and the top decks as consistent as possible. Like, Shaman loves to play off the top in these aggro matchups. They don't need to accrue resources, and playing off the top actually gets your quest done as soon as possible. If you just play every overload as soon as it's available, spend your mana every turn. Insta Feral Spirit, it's just looking great for Surrender.
I mean, even this Fireheart, if it's nothing more than a 3-mana 3/3 Discover a Spell, that's good. That's a good card at this point to be able to keep up with that value I was talking about.
If anything, it's better to have less cards at this point to play around with.
True.
A couple of times I have lost from this position as Shaman because I was like, oh, I have this extra Lightning Bloom, no mana to spend it on, let me just hold on to it. And then my opponent, with nothing on board, goes Elucia, they go Bloom, and their top deck is like a Perpetual Flame, and then I've lost my board, and then they just went off of value. So that's like the one thing Surrender has to be careful of here. Granted, he doesn't have the cleanest trades into these neophytes, but the Primal Dungeoneer is excellent to make sure he has value even after the trades.
Gets himself, okay, not a nature spell, but Guidance is that value that we were talking about. You're not going to turn your nose up at that. I also like the trades here. I was at first going to start talking about the potential for just going aggressive on the other side. You know that they have a Void Touch Attendant in hand, so you can kind of lock out their ability to play it if you just go super aggro, but the VTs that come from a Wriggling Horror are just too scary.
I agree, especially without a Perpetual for Surrender at the moment. For Trahison, this is really, really painful. Raised Dead, sure, Twilight, and then Dusk Imp, Wriggling Horror, you at least get a 3/4 on board, which looks pretty well shaped against this board from Surrender. Going for a 4/3 instead. It's a bit weaker to Flame, but it does get more disruption online at least.
Yeah, I think if they've got Flame, you're kind of just losing this game no matter what. There's little that you can do about that. The 3/3 off the second quest completion, I think, is just available right now with Guidance Lightning Bolt.
Yeah. Obviously, the mana works out a bit weird because of the Neophyte, but it's fine for Surrender. Every play this turn involves a spell in some way, or shape, or form, so I would rather get the guaranteed 3/3 by playing these two spells instead of with Taunt, I mean, rather than Fireheart, which is also a 3/3 but has more upside later potentially. The thing about playing it to be safer to Elucia, like Fireheart is a card you really don't want to lose into Elucia, but he doesn't have to do it that early, right? Trahison's only going into 5 mana. He can't play a Fireheart from Elucia.
Yeah, I think I agree.
Oh.
But wow, Surrender's just going with it. I guess the tempo of a 2/3, 3/3, sorry, is nice in its own right.
But he gets the 3/3 by playing 2 spells.
Yeah.
He'll only overload for 1 this way. But he picks up Overdraft, so that's amazing. Next turn, Guidance can Overdraft for at least 2, unlock everything, make sure that the top decks are going straight from the right-hand side to the board. You just keep your hand empty as Shaman until you get Brukan, and then you just win the game.
Yeah, you just stick a funnel on that deck and say, right, come on, out you come, onto the board, boys.
He's doing the best he can, no Elucia even as an option, and Surrender has taken 0 damage this entire game so far. Everything going according to plan. Interesting, he's actually cut an investment opportunity from his list. I'm only talking about the build now because he's ahead, that it doesn't matter. But I actually really like the cut. I think opportunity, you might as well just run an actual overload card if possible. Because the opportunity is really not added tempo until after Brukan, or like...
Yeah. I know what you mean. It doesn't do more than replace itself.
True. Overdraft to remove shield and trade if you like. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised not to see Feral Spirits first and then Overdraft, unless, as you said, he's going double Overdraft, which, okay, sure. This makes sense, I guess.
All he's doing now is playing around Elucia.
Yeah. You're absolutely right.
The hand as narrow as possible. She's not even there.
That's an upgrade. Probably.
Yeah.
Honestly, the only Elucia we've seen today was... I'm not going to call that a misplay. It's just creative conceding from Trahison. The only Elucia we've seen today already happened just like in a 1 game from the side of the shadow. It was a mirror, but the one who played Elucia was already so far ahead, Alan, I believe, that it didn't really matter.
There's a good meme to be had there, like when Buzz Lightyear thinks he's flying at the end of Toy Story. It's like, I'm not misplaying, I'm conceding with style. Yeah, there it is. Surrender does get the win with the Quest Shaman. Everything pretty much going as expected so far. Priest beating the Demon Hunter. Winning the Priest Mirror was, of course, a massive deal for Trahison, I think, to even have a shot in this series. But now with the Shaman down, there is the Rogue to counter for Trahison. And it's really just a straightforward question now. Can he win against the Shaman and the Handlock with his Rogue?
Yes, and I will say that in those 2 matchups, I do favor the Rogue, but not as heavily as you might expect. The Shaman does have the capability to build relatively consistent boards, which puts the Rogue in a position where they can feel pressured to get the combo done. Again, I wonder what type of hand you're supposed to mulligan for as Shaman versus Garrote Rogue, because last week I was questioning a lot of the Perpetual Flame keep. Surrender was one of the people who prioritized keeping that versus Garrote Rogue. I wonder if he has changed his mind at all, because you can see the reasoning, like it beats Zoo boards from Rogue, but it's not high pressure, and then you can just lose to the combo half of the deck potentially because you didn't get enough tempo in the early game. It's just really tricky to play on both sides. I just feel that the Rogue has a little bit more room to be flexible with their tools. They draw a little bit too quickly, get to the end of their deck before Shaman gets Brukan that consistently. So I feel it comes out slightly in the Rogue's favor, but definitely not unwinnable for the Shaman.
Yeah, not at all. And I think, again, with a deck that is this... I mean, I would say difficult, but it's oft misplayed, I will say as well. There's always the consideration of how do you make it as difficult for your opponent to actually win the game, even if you shouldn't win the game from a position. Like, making them do the combo can make them mess up a lot of the time. But honestly, making them commit to the zoo-based game plan is also a way that they can mess up, because you can just delete your win condition. If you use too many shadow steps, both your field contacts, both your spell damages with the Orc Merchants, you can then potentially make them mess up that way. But I do agree, for the most part, I would like to see a higher pressure start. But here we have the perfect test group here, the control group for Surrender, where he could just keep Perpetual Flame again.
He's thinking about it long and hard, and in the meantime, I've been enjoying watching Heason's pre-game match ritual. I mean, he got rid of his pillow, he stretched out a bit, he shook his hands and his fingers. There was a lot going on there, but you know he's gearing up for playing this deck because it's got a lot of APM involved. When you pop off with field contact, you got to make a lot of snap decisions. Small math breakpoints also make a big difference in the matchup, and we shall see how Surrender approaches it. He tosses the flame this time. Derek, I think people know what's up now with this matchup. You're looking for Bloom and Note Taker.
Okay, well, he's got a very decent hand to be moving along with, just in terms of putting some threats on board. But Trahison has better than a decent hand. This is the Stone Cold Cocoa Nuts right now. Oh my lord.
I will say this is the type of hand that appreciates it when your opponent keeps Perpetual Flame, right? Because you're not doing anything on the board for a long time. You're probably drawing with Shroud and Swindle before you even proc your Octobot. So if anything, okay, Surrender has the best of both worlds. So if anything, Surrender kind of has a chance against this opener because he can get down next turn Canal Slogger and Novice Zapper. So it depends on Trahison how aggressive he feels like Surrender's next turn will be and how greedy he wants to get with all these draw spells. Because if he goes for either Shroud or Swindle here, it's a while before he can actually go Octobot with the Og Merchant because he has to use coin, right?
Such an interesting opening. I think Dagger is probably okay leading up into like Shroud and then proc the Octobot the turn after. But Coin Shroud, Coin Swindle, Prize Plunder as well, all of these plays were something I would consider because they still draw you cards and get you closer towards getting the Octobot procced and going for the big pop-off. The downside is, of course, that you use the coin, which can be a full turn's difference in terms of actually being able to go for the combo.
And because Surrender's just seen this slow turn from Trahison, I absolutely want to get down the Canal Slogger and the Novice Zapper. Yeah, they might have Prize Plunder, but they might have it at any point in the game.
True.
And it's the hardest to get 4 damage off of Plunderer this early on. It's max pressure. It's punishing the type of hands that want to play Shroud and Swindle in the early game before an Octobot ever hits the board. And if Surrender can get 2 hits with the Canal Slogger, suddenly he's just like a couple bolts away from closing the game.
Yeah, it does delete any potential you have to kill Octobot without it proccing, but I think it's kind of already past the point where Trahison will play it without immediately proccing it himself. So losing the Slogger and the spell damage from Zapper, I think is perfectly okay. But now for Trahison, how are we approaching this turn? Because while we were talking about how valuable the coin is, I think this is a threatening of enough board to the point where you are looking at Octobot, Org Merchant, Coin Swindle, Prize Plunderer. Like, obviously it's annoying to play the Swindle after you've reduced your hand with Octobot. You'd much rather play it first. But this Slogger is a little bit scary.
I do think he can afford to take 1 tank from this board. This absolutely has to be an Octo-Procto turn, but I think it'll depend on what comes off this Swindle, whether he commits the Prize Plunder as well, because if he doesn't get very much for a field contact train, he might hold back a bit. It turns out that this is enough though, because he ends up with Penflinger, which is really good in this spot because it can function as multiple battle cries. If Trahison gets prepped next turn, he's absolutely in business, and he also doesn't have to pop off next turn. He just has Shroud of Concealment. Pretty interesting hand from Surrender because we could just see Note Taker Flame for a full clear. It's Giga Overload, but pretty aggressive. He could copy Lightning Bolt instead. Still play Flame with the one Maker bumping in. Okay.
Interesting. I mean, I was thinking I'd make this play, but I would go Perpetual Flame and then you go for the Note Taker and then Lightning Bolt, right? I guess maybe you would rather have another Perpetual Flame. They're going to go for a big field contact turn, aren't they? So I suppose this makes sense.
Yeah, I like the deviation from Surrender. And Flinger with Shroud, pretty clean. We'll see if he just commits the Flinger for the clear on the 3-1 here.
I think you do.
Yeah, dagger down the 2-1. And Surrender's aggressive board push has already met the first clear quite easily.
Okay, that's not bad. Obviously, we're still a turn away, or sorry, 2 Overload cards away from getting the 3-3 Elemental on board as well, which is possible on this turn. But I think you do just have to be more greedy with this Perpetual Flame.
Oh, interesting for Totem. I was thinking going investment opportunity just to get the mana spent out of the way, and there's an upside if you hit exactly Guidance, I suppose. As a Overload card, you want to play with that mana remaining. He wouldn't want to play like a Bloom in this situation or a second Lightning Bolt. But the Totem does end up preserving his Diligent Note Taker a bit better here. Trahison going Kazakus. Like, just look how long Surrender's delayed the field contact turn by going for that aggressive start. It still might not be enough to get there, but this is turns where Surrender could just get to his own Brucon. Perfect Golem for Trahison as well.
Yeah, it's a very nice Golem, but a very nice top deck as well for Surrender. He could get himself a 5, 6, or 7 drop on this turn, depending on what he likes most. I think you're probably going 6, right?
Yeah, I like the 6 a lot. There's just a lot of good outcomes, especially if you have mana left after it's played to play a spell. Because if it's Auctioneer or the Onyx Mage Skype, you can keep generating more value.
True.
The 7s, I'm not super sure of. I think the average stats do come out better, but in terms of additional effects, it's really only Alabaster and Stormwind Champion that are good, I think.
Okay. That's big.
Yes.
It's quiet. Too quiet.
Here we go.
It's the turn. The turn we've all been waiting for. Brain Freeze, of course, puts an end to that 8 damage for the moment.
Yeah, just like Life Coach, deal with the Nosdarmu first, think about it later.
True. Okay, doesn't want to proc the Octobot on this turn, which I can understand. Unless you hit a Shadow Step, using your second Octobot is pretty valuable.
Yeah. Oh, this makes this really difficult to work out now, though, because obviously he has no more access to immediately proccing Octo, but then how to use the step? He doesn't need it for the field contact because he has another one in hand. So I think it ends up being just one of these Og Merchants played just to keep cycling, and he can kill the Zapper with the dagger hit too, and then next turn Octobot and field contact.
It's interesting because I'm actually already looking at the potential for lethal next turn. I don't know if that's a little bit naive of me to be able to think you'd be able to get there, but like with an Octobot, you could potentially step it again to get a bunch more mana. You have prep plus the Garrote. Like, there's a lot of mana you can work with and a lot of card draw too.
It's not naive, it's possible, but the deck needs to be stacked in the right order. I suppose that the prep actually gets you card draw, so you need to draw like a expensive-ish spell off of the field contact. There's also like a couple outcomes that stop the train and require you to find another battle cry, like the 2 secret passages and the other Garrote. So by no means guaranteed, but possible. Right now, Surrender, Perpetual Flame feels like at least one of these needs to get used so he can get the 3-3 online.
Wow.
Full hold. Okay.
Man, he's full controlling this. Basically just saying to Trahison, I think you're going to mess up the combo at the moment is, or I guess at the very least applying so much pressure that he'll be forced into messing up the combo. Either way though, this is a lot less pressure that you're applying. You have to trade into the field contact.
Yes. With the 3-2 instead. I was thinking the Flame just to get the 3-3 was pretty good, and you get to push an additional 3 if you trade the 2-3 into the 1-1 here. Maybe Surrender just hoping that the other field contact was there, but Trahison very unlikely to just end his train like that and float a mana if he didn't have a backup plan. But there's one of the bad outcomes, right? A prep stops this train from being guaranteed. And if he's going to go Octo Procto now, he has no mana left to work with. This is actually a terrible proc, only 2 cards discounted.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, isn't it? And
Passage with no mana remaining?
Passage?
I don't know what's going on.
Really? I mean, this felt to me like as soon as he played the Neophyte, which I was already kind of doubtful of, I thought he was going in on doing the combo next turn.
Me too.
But
yeah, he has to step the field contact.
Yeah, you messed up by playing the prep. Fine, you eat that. Whatever.
Oh!
Really?
Oh no, that's the last contact. What if he misses on the second shadow step? Was he going for exactly that? I don't know.
Why would you?
I don't think you would. Yeah. Oh my God, Surrender. It's just what? What?
This turn was an absolute mess from Trahison. I don't know what that was.
I'll tell you what it means though. Surrender's just winning very hard. Not only is this field contact used, it's 1 Og Merchant used. So now Trahison needs to manually get to the bottom of his deck, have a target for Og Merchant step, and 1 more card draw effect to get both Garrots. And he needs all of that because Surrender's at 30. He needs 2 spell damage.
Man, I mean, I don't want to rag on Trahison too hard, but like most Garrote Rogue misplays that you see, like I feel like the idea is there, but they overdraw a card or they, you know, don't give themselves enough health to put spell damage on it. It's stuff like that that's easy to miss, but you should still be ironing out. This just felt like there was no game plan going into this turn. He was just kind of playing cards, which is, I mean, you can't afford to do that with this deck. It will punish you so hard.
I will say there are spots where your only option is to field contact, play your only battle cry, and then pray that it's just a train of battle cries from that point. But I don't think he was that desperate enough to go for it like that turn. Or at least it doesn't start with Neophyte, right? It starts with something to save you more mana so you can play more battle cries. I mean, and have the option to play something off passage in case you get it, like what happened.
Yeah. Even if it was just like contact Neophyte, realize that you have nothing else, and just shadow step the contact to go for lethal next turn, sure, that's fine. You still likely win the game. Whereas this is just a 100% L. I don't think there's anything left available to him. He's used both contacts right, so he has no card draw.
Yeah. I think Trahison knows it. His expression, I mean, you can say, yeah, he got unlucky with the immediate next draw being a prep, but I really think there needed to be some sort of contingency plan because prep wasn't the only brick there. There was like the other secret pass. I guess not a complete brick, but possible, you know. I was talking about how the train can stop and you don't often get the immediate lethal from that position because you can't maneuver your hand that the Octobot gets enough relevant discounts because you need to spend mana to draw those cards first. Really sad to see the game end up that way because I think, you know, the early game plan made a lot of sense. I liked the respect on the early Canal Slugger from Surrender, but the turns after that, how to use the time that Trahison bought, it felt like it all fell apart.
It did indeed. I think that's just one to forget all about for Trahison because it was just a complete disaster. Not up to the standard of play that we've seen from him in his short time in Asia Pacific, and not the standard of play that you can play at and expect to do well. If you're playing Garrote Rogue games like that, you will not last long in Grandmasters, as cruel as it sounds to say. So hopefully he can get the prep in, because I do think, oh, well, kind of a cruel choice of words to get the prep in, but he should prep with this deck, I think, a little bit more. Get the practice in order to make sure that as the weeks progress, I don't see Garrote Rogue going anywhere anytime soon, unless it's nerfed or changed in some fashion. And so it needs to be a deck that you are comfortable with in order to play in this metagame, which hopefully, as I said, Trahison will be next week, because for this week, he's out of the picture. These are the 8 players left in the running, fighting out for that finals tomorrow and on Sunday.
Eric, I'm not gonna lie, I thought the series was not done yet. I can't believe that was
Oh wow. Yeah, that was it.
One deck left. Yeah, it just completely flew over my head. I'm so sorry, but that's how it works with Last Hero Standing. I'm not sure if it's a blessing or a curse that if you lose with a deck and you know you misplayed, that you don't get another chance on it. So